Hello, everybody. Eternal Durdles is celebrating Bandmas this year by posting an episode every single weekday in December. That means like 20 episodes. As you can imagine, it is a gigantic lift for me. If you can support the channel by going to patreon.com/eternaldurdles for the low price of $5, you'll be getting an episode every single weekday in December, free of charge. That's just going to happen either way. And you'll be getting ad-free content and a bonus episode every week. So if you can do that, that's great. Thanks for watching. On with the show.
All right, welcome to Eternal Durdles. Here are our gut takes on the ban restricted announcement. Phil, do you have it up on your screen as well?
Yes.
Yeah. So you won't hear it, you won't see any video of us because we are doing this on the fly. So off of our phones. So what we're going to do is just quickly go over the ban announcement and then give our gut reaction. So I'm sure you're well aware if you're watching this video, Psychic Frog and
Bauble
have been banned, which is pretty much, I think, what everybody, what a majority of the people in our video said was going to happen. Phil, gut reactions to the bans before we go into the specifics of the ban announcement.
I think that they did a huge lift in Modern, given that they unbanned a bunch of cards that I think will only speed the format up, even though it's already super fast. So they also explicitly talked about wanting to give people the nostalgia of a Modern long gone that they wanted to rehash. So they sort of revitalized a couple of different archetypes, whether it be Affinity or Arclight Phoenix or Hodak or whatever. And then I feel like that was an approach where they say, we heard the feedback, we like we see what you guys want, and we're going to offer it to you in this experiment. And then for Legacy, they did the absolute bare minimum in a way that I can't really describe as anything other than pretty limp dick. And I think they sort of missed the mark on what was a really big opportunity here that is sort of just leaving me, at least, with a sense of dissatisfaction, just sort of like meh, like of course this is all you did, like this is just par for the course. Like they show that they have the capacity to do something bigger and to take a shot on goal with, like they did in Modern, and then just did not exude any of that for Legacy.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to point out too that the both the Legacy and Modern announcements were both written by the same person. So the overlapping parallels for the thought pattern here is not a different group of people necessarily, or at least the person doing the messaging was involved in this discussion at some point. So it's interesting that you point out the idea of like a Modern of days past, because there's certainly a longing for that in Legacy. Now, I will say to my gut reaction is that this is what I expected. I got what my needs list was, but I didn't get my wants list. I think that Reanimator is still going to be. This is my gut reaction, that Reanimator will still be a top tier deck. If you don't deal with the Entomb Reanimate, like the deck still just gets to be a tempo deck that slots in like 10 cards to make Reanimator a thing. So I don't see that deck's going to drop from existence by any stretch of imagination. Slightly powered down because of lack of Psychic Frog, but the deck was quite good previously. And then I think, in the time between Grief and Psychic Frog being the things to do, I think that this deck is still going to be just fine. I think you're going to see an increase in Bowmasters for sure in the format. But if these decks continue to dominate, we will eventually go from Bowmaster being the card back to Dothy Voidwalker being the card that people play. I think for my, of course, I'm on a deck that didn't get hit by this announcement, being that I play, Nadu Breakfast, a Cephalid Breakfast. So I'm, personally happy that my deck gets to remain strong for a while. But I also am just relieved that they actually did make a move. This is twice the move that they made in the last ban announcement, doing 2 cards. So we've got that going for us at least. My hope going out of this is that we go from we go into a situation where Bowmasters is probably dominating for a while. And it either falls off because it's just not good, which is unlikely, or it becomes so ubiquitous into the format that the next ban announcement includes Bowmasters. It's a card I just don't want to see in the format. But I think Phil, we'll touch more on this in our episode tomorrow, where we really dive into things. But I think the big takeaway from this for me is these two sentences in the like fourth and fifth paragraph. One of the pillars of legacy is free counter magic. It is part of the glue that hold this format together. That to me is like the biggest, like, if you've ever heard like, is Days a pillar, is Force of Will a pillar, there you go, you've got it right there. It's in black and white on the text.
I agree with that. I mean, we knew that they weren't actually going to give us that amount of transparency about like actually listing format pillars because in a way that would garner too much trust with their player base. Which okay, whatever. I actually want to extend into something that we've talked about regarding them announcing or talking about what the target is or how they view the format. So that in this sense, they're saying we believe that free counter magic is glue, um, and that it says when certain strategies can ignore this pillar at very little cost to their primary proactive game plan, the format can fall apart quickly. Decks like Mystic Forge, Painter Servant, and other ancient tomb decks happily include the one mana artifact that can replace itself when it's no longer useful. Now, I hate when they do things like the one mana artifact that can replace itself when it's no longer useful. Wording like that just, I feel like, obfuscates responsibility. Like, you didn't have to tack on the cantrip effect onto that card.
Agreed.
Like, you guys just don't have to do those things. So like saying as though it's like it's passive language, right? It blames the card for the problem and not the design or the way that they've been moving towards cards never having a situation where they're dead or not as useful, even though the intent of the card is to do exactly that one thing. So like I'm not going to ever let them get off the hook for that kind of passive language. But one thing that they talked about in Modern, they said it's pretty deep into their Modern. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 paragraphs in. They need an editor, but it says, it is worth noting that this is the beginning of a new era. Many of you have given feedback time and again about the good old days of Modern before Modern Horizon sets started increasing the power level of the format and making iconic decks obsolete. After long consideration, we've chosen an initial list of cards to unban. Now, I want to read that again, just for clarity, and I'm just going to swap Modern for Legacy and tell me if it sounds any different from what we've been all clamoring for. It is worth noting that this is the beginning of a new era. Many of you have given feedback time and again about the good old days of Legacy before Modern Horizons started increasing the power level of the format and making iconic decks obsolete. After long consideration, we've chosen an initial list of cards to unban. Now, that is indistinguishable from what we've all been asking, and yet they only applied that sort of feedback to Modern and none whatsoever to Legacy, and that's why this announcement to me feels so like a massive miss for Legacy, because now it's not this announcement has shown that they have the capacity to do the things that the feedback that they're getting, that the players want, are offering, right? Like, players are giving the feedback. They clearly are able to receive and then interpret and then act upon that feedback in a way that is meaningful and exciting and refreshing. And they only applied it to Modern and just did not apply it to Legacy. And I don't fully understand why, other than Modern obviously was a single deck format, 60% Boros or whatever, and the One Ring was in every single list, and they needed to make a bunch of changes. But we've been the Legacy community has been arguing for changes similarly for how many months in a row now? How many, like, since Lord of the Rings came out? If not sooner than that, we've been saying we need a huge overhaul. We need an overhaul. We need an overhaul, and then they just keep delaying and refuse to give it. And then here they did Frog and Vexing Bauble, which is just like, okay, so you took a hit at the Ancient Tomb decks, and then you took away Frog, that was supposedly a problem for the Ancient Tomb decks, and all of the other decks that can't exist in a format that is otherwise unbelievably fast, just don't get any boost of unbans to like help them out, or any of the nostalgic hits of people wanting to play cards that they can't anymore because Modern Horizons has power crept them. Like, we don't get any unbans to help them out. I mean, people were arguing for like how easy it would be to just say a mana drain is unbanned because it sees no play in Vintage anymore. And then similar how they printed Counterspell into Modern, Counterspell sees a ton of play in Modern and sees zero play in Legacy. And so having an upgraded version of Counterspell in Legacy to maybe give people a little bit of nuanced play to build around as something exciting and new, rather than only taking things away. I mean, it seems like there could have been something there, and they just decided not to take a shot on goal.
Yeah. two points I want to build on as we close this up. Um, the concept of like, obviously this time they were looking at modern heavily. That goes without saying, since the 7 cards overall changed here. What's interesting about that is that I think that if you're looking at a format like modern and you're like, what do we got to do to fix this format? It's obviously broken. It was a 1 deck format basically. um uh they the focus here was to fix the problems in modern. But if what you're saying is if the same problem, at least the same community sentiment is there with legacy, it's obvious that the overall team making these decisions was overloaded on modern here. They had to make a decision about modern, and obviously, once again, did not get to do their research to the utmost extent that they should be doing for legacy, which again bears out there should be a community panel of people who actually care and play about this format that get involved in these discussions. Because if that was the case, I think that this particular ban list would have been much more robust.
Yeah, and it just seems like they keep missing the boat, because at the end, it's a bunch of platitudes, a bunch of stuff that we already knew at the beginning. Nothing had changed. Psychic Frog is strong enough to prevent folks from exploring adding white, red, or green to these blue-based tempo decks. I don't know what they're talking about. People have explored white. Like, the need for Swords to Plowshares was explored. Like, all of the decks that were trying to pivot into being able to beat Frog were adding white. We saw Esper as a version. Granted, it was playing Psychic Frog, but it added white, which added more susceptibility to its mana base against the mono red decks in order to splash white for Psychic Frog. So, like, that, Psychic Frog is strong enough to prevent folks from exploring. It explicitly didn't do that. Now, exploring adding red or green to these blue-based tempo decks, it's like, yeah, because all of the tools have moved into black. There's no reason to not extend beyond black after you're into, it's like Psychic Frog, and then you have Bowmasters and Dothy Voidwalker, like you were explaining. But like that one line where it says it's strong enough to prevent folks from exploring adding white is just explicitly false, like categorically false. And so for them to write that feels like they took a notion from a while ago and then just didn't keep up with the fact that people were exploring other things. Like, they were exploring ways to fight over the frog. Now, granted, that's because there were ways that you could fight over Frog and ways that you can't fight over Vexing Bauble. Like, Vexing Bauble just getting to sack and cantrip itself, where Psychic Frog actually needs to engage in combat and connect. So there are things that, like, were involved there. But, like, there little things like that, like subtleties like that, where prevent folks from exploring adding white is just a nod to, you guys didn't follow what was happening. You didn't see what was going on in a way that, like, was as in touch as you seem to be in modern, which got twice the length of written commentary on where their heads were at. I mean, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 22 paragraphs on
versus
modern.
I think 7.
Now, I get that 22 paragraphs is because they have to talk about, each card that they're unbanning and why. But, like, can we get a rationale for, hey, there was talk about, or we considered unbanning these cards for Legacy, and here's why we didn't? Like, just giving us some sort of insight, because it just feels out of touch to me. Like, I don't want to harp on them because, like, don't get me wrong, I think this is better than what ban announcements of old have had, but this one just shows, before, it didn't seem like they had the capacity to really look in depth at feedback that players were getting for what they wanted, not just for what what WotC thought was, quote, or not quote, good for the format, or in their mind, data wise. Like, unbanning the stuff that they did in modern between Mox Opal, Faithless Looting, Green Sun Zenith, and Splinter Twin. I mean, those things, if you're looking for a healthy format, those things are nonsensical. Mox Opal and Faithless Looting are only going to speed the format up. They explicitly said that Splinter Twin only helps exactly one deck, and that deck is an A+B and the game on the spot. And then Green Sun Zenith is going to get, like, jammed into primarily helping the Green Sun Zenith, the Primeval Titan decks, which are already good and didn't need much help to begin with. So, like, maybe, they were talking about, like, maybe Elves gets the pickup for in modern with Green Sun Zenith, and it's like, okay, cool. So there will maybe be some flack from those, but for the most part, like, this stuff is going to speed the format up in a way like, granted that the format's already fast, but like they didn't do anything to slow the format down or give decks that needed help some help. You know what I mean? Where
Well, we will have more
yeah,
more
we'll
on
have more.
this.
We'll have more.
Yeah, we'll go into much deeper detail tonight when we record. But I wanted to get this out so that people could get our gut reactions to it, and we'll have more measured takes once we get a chance to get home and do all this. Thank you everybody for watching, and we will catch you soon.
Before you go, I need some help. Please subscribe to this channel and do your part to help sustain the Legacy content ecosystem. Just subscribing to this channel goes a long way to reminding YouTube that people love and support this format. Now, if you really want to go the extra mile, you should think about supporting us through Patreon. Both the links for subscription and Patreon are right here. And if you're listening on an audio format, you can go to patreon.com/eternaldurdles. Thanks so much for watching.